Is the data coming out of these patriarchal countries reliable when it comes to gender violence and domestic violence?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I mean, some of the most patriarchal countries don't collect any data at all, right? So Saudi Arabia doesn't do a survey on domestic violence. I was in Uzbekistan for a month. There is no survey. The government is not collecting data on intimate partner violence. That said, many governments, as part of their statistical agencies, have made lots of efforts to try to carefully calculate or ask sensitive questions about people's levels of intimate partner violence. So instead of saying, has your partner beaten you or have you been abused, they'll say, have you ever been slapped or something like that. But even then, there can be differences in reporting. So for example, there's a study in Pakistan whereby the reporting will vary as to whether it's like after 5 p.m. and maybe other people are more likely to be in the home, or if at the time of the survey, the woman's mother-in-law was also present. So certainly, I don't think that a survey is 100% reliable. I totally agree with you. So sometimes we don't have those surveys. Sometimes the women will be frightened to report things, especially if it's like revealing family secrets. In Mexico, they say the laundry shouldn't be washed in public. So certainly you might think that in a conservative society, people will keep it quiet. So I would not trust the reporting 100%. The most reliable indicator is going to be female homicides, right? If women are being murdered, that's a pretty good objective data. Unless you've got the worst government in the world that doesn't even keep track of murders. And that, let me add to that point on statistics. So across Latin America, many feminist campaigners have campaigned for a special definition of femicides, where it's saying a woman was murdered due to gender-related reasons, like whether that's sexual control, a man feeling that his honor is being infringed or being aggressive, etc. And the problem with that kind of data is twofold. It relies on the police's subjective assessment of what caused the violence. And there are two reasons to be careful on that, is that one, where you have very weak state control, like in Northeast Brazil, and you don't have that many police people on the ground and they can't do that much reporting or investigation. But when the state is totally overburdened, they're not necessarily going to understand the reasons for the murder. So you can't necessarily compare the level of femicides across Brazil because the capacity in Sao Paulo is so much better than in the Northeast. So that's one issue. Also, we see change over time such that I was talking to police officers in Brazil and they were saying maybe 5 years ago, coroners didn't recognize a woman's head being shaved as indicative of gender-based violence, right? They might just, that they didn't pick up on that clue. So if you see all this heterogeneity in the police's subjective assessment of femicides, then even though you understand why people want to get that data, the actual data that you're producing isn't so reliable. So as you rightly say, we want to track whether these murders are going up or down so that we know what's working, right? We want to be able to evaluate what policies are effective, what interventions are effective, what other factors are going to make things worse. We can't do that effectively if our underlying data isn't reliable. Because otherwise you would get a really perverse and weird outcome that as the Sao Paulo police improves and becomes more gender sensitive, then the femicides could go up just because they're recognizing it as femicide. And that would be crazy because we'd be incorrectly punishing improved gender sensitivity of the police. And we don't want that. So for that reason, I totally agree with you that it's very important that we get decent, reliable data that enables us to track change over time and between places.